Welcome into the Skinny Podcast. It's the weekly potpourri edition. I'm Richard Skinner, Local12.com, digital sports columnist and editor with Rick Broering. As always, it's presented by Blake, the attorney Mason. We're talking about sports topics of local interest. We've got a gambling segment to get to. And my favorite portion of the podcast, you can ask me a question on any topic. Just go to the Twitterverse, the Xverse, hit up the hashtag AskSkinnyAnything. I was flipping around my television dial last night, kind of bored because there wasn't much on. And lo and behold, who pops up on my TV screen? Rick Broering, the host of the Darren Horn Show. I'm watching on Bally Sports Ohio. You did a fine job. I didn't know you were doing that already.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Last night was the first episode that aired, first one we recorded. So there'll be another one coming out in a couple of weeks, and we'll go all season long, giving people some insight into the program. Hopefully, we'll do some cool stuff as it goes on.
All right, Bally Sports Ohio is the place.
Yeah, appreciate you shouting that out. But let's start off with some Bengals conversations. This is actually an info or action-packed week for the podcast, really, in Cincinnati sports. There's a lot going on to talk about. And we'll start with the Bengals because it's a disaster right now. They're 0-3 after the loss to the Commanders on Monday night, 38-33. They'll go to Carolina this Sunday at 1 o'clock to try to get back on the winning side of things. Skinny, the defensive performance was pathetic. You have talked about that with Trags, and everybody else has talked about it locally. My question for you is, can they fix this, or is there something fundamentally wrong with the personnel or the coaching, the philosophy that they're using on defense? Because I understand that there have been injuries. I know that Sheldon Rankins is out, BJ Hill's out. They don't have Miles Murphy for whatever that's worth. But it feels like there might be more than just that going on here with the defense.
Yeah, I think it is. I want to say it's as simple as the injuries, but I want to get to another portion of this layer as well. I mean, let's face it, the two guys they started at defensive tackle on Monday night, Jay Tufele and Zach Carter, if everybody is healthy, they're not even active on game day. I mean, they're literally not. The four defensive tackles would be the two rookies, Chris Jenkins and McKinley Jackson, and then the other two guys who were hurt BJ Hill and Sheldon Rankins. I talked to Sam Hubbard yesterday. Sam Hubbard graded the worst of any defensive lineman, 239 out of 239 in the NFL this past Monday night. And I went to Sam yesterday, and Ben Baby from ESPN was there, and Fox 19, I think, came at the very end. And I just said, hey, man, are you playing hurt? Are you hurt? And he said, I don't want to talk about injuries. I've got to be better, blah, blah, blah. Well, lo and behold, Ben actually reported later in the night that he's recovering from a grade 3 hamstring injury, which is the worst, the highest grade you can have, that he suffered in training camp. And I can confirm that did happen, the hamstring injury itself, because Lou Anarumo told us yesterday that he was dealing with a hamstring issue. Now, people could say, why run him out there? Well, did anybody see Joseph Osai play? And so that gets to the next problem of they've just done such a poor job drafting that there's just no depth. You know, Zach Carter was a 3rd-round pick. Those guys should be contributing. Joseph Osai was a 3rd-round pick. That guy should be contributing. You mentioned Miles Murphy. I think you'll see a lot of Miles Murphy when he comes back, but he's not here now because he's not healthy. And I think that's literally where it started. Jaden Daniels, had a lot of quick passes, but the times he had to drop back and stand in the pocket, he had all day to survey the field. They got no rush on him because you got a hobbled guy in Hendrickson, a guy who can't play worth a damn in Joseph Osai, and then 2 rum-dums playing tackle. I think that's as simple as that. I really believe that. I'm not looking to make it an excuse, but I think it's just that simple.
Is Hendrickson banged up too, or did you mean to say Hubbard there?
No, a little bit. He was listed as an illness yesterday, but I saw him come off the field a handful of times, messing with his foot, talking to the training staff. But he was not listed as such. He was listed yesterday as having an illness why he didn't practice. But I thought he had a good game, but teams right now are double and triple teaming him because they realize we can block one-on-one against these other clowns.
Sure. Or if nothing else, I mean, with Jaden Daniels, he just rolled the pocket out to the other side, get away from him as much as he wanted to. Right. I mean, Trags made a great point in your podcast, I thought, right after the game, which was that the Bengals set no edge with their defense. But Jaden Daniels was just running sideline to sideline as much as he wanted, moving the pocket wherever he wanted. We can say that Lou Anarumo was absolutely horrible in that game, and he was. That's a fact. I mean, there's definitely personnel things going on. There's definitely injuries going on, but there's bottom line is when you're playing a rookie quarterback and he looks that good, you did not come up with a good enough defensive game plan. And that's on Lou Anarumo. And I also think it's worth noting that he has some shortcomings as a coordinator. We've talked about them over the course of the year. I mean, we've already talked about the lack of run defense, which that's partly on personnel and I think partly on him. We've previously talked in years past about he's really into the philosophy of give up a lot of yards, but we're not going to give up points. It's bend but don't break type philosophy. And that has come back to bite them at different times. But I'll also say with some fans, it's always about the coaching staff. It's
Sure.
like anything goes wrong, it's like the coach has to be fired immediately. I'm from this weird place where I can acknowledge that that wasn't good enough, but I also think Lou Anarumo has done plenty of really good things, and I don't know that it's time to be like, Lou Anarumo's done. He can't coach anymore. You got to get him out of here. What would be your take on all of the fan conversation about Lou Anarumo?
Yeah, I mean, that's always where fans go. It's the easiest place to go because fans are smarter than coaches. But and listen, some of the criticism is warranted. The one thing I think people wanted him to do more was blitz, and I asked him that question yesterday. I said, "Do you regret not blitzing more?" And I said, and I say that fully recognizing you didn't get in many blitz situations. I mean, they were 2nd and 4, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. You didn't have a lot of 3rd and 7s, 3rd and 8s in that game, and so there's not a lot of blitzes that you can call. And he kind of acknowledged, yeah, maybe I could have, but again, we just never really got in great positions to blitz. I think he was also fearful of the first 2 games, Jaden Daniels, they ran a lot of quick screen game. And so your fear is if I send a blitz and he runs that quick screen game, one missed tackle turns, a 5-yard gain into a 60-yard touchdown. I get that fear. He blitzed at the end of the game. People complained that he ran the 0 blitz late in the game, trying to knock them out of field goal range, and he throws a touchdown pass to Terry McLaurin. And so you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah, no, I mean, to me, that was what I wanted to see more of. Now, granted, that was a situation that called for it, but like that was a great play by the Bengals, great play call by the Bengals. Jaden Daniels just made an unbelievable play, and McLaurin made a great catch too. That's just fantastic football. And at that point, you have to tip your cap. And that's why part of me, it's weird because coming out of that game, I mean, watching it that night, it felt disastrous. It felt as bad as any game I've ever watched as a Bengals fan. Afterwards, I'm miserable. But then like the next day, as I'm listening to more and more people talk, I go back, I keep thinking like, man, Jaden Daniels looked really freaking good. And I know that's on the Bengals partially, but that was also a fantastic performance by him. I think this Washington team overall is probably better than people really thought going into the season. And so there's part of me that feels like that really wasn't as bad of a loss as it felt. This team is going to be okay. The real issue is they lost to the crappy team they played the first week against the Patriots. They should have never lost that game, and then this wouldn't feel as disastrous as it feels right now. But then there's this other part of me, Skinny, that feels like this is a total disaster that is just starting to unravel, and we're in for the worst of it ahead. How should I feel? Which is right?
No, I think it's a fair way to feel. And I even said that after the New England game, that you giving yourself no more margin for error to slip up in a winnable game. Not just a winnable game, a game you should have won. You're a touchdown favorite at home. That is a game you should win in the NFL. I'm with you. I fully acknowledge Jane Daniels is really good. I mean, I think he's going to be maybe the best of this rookie quarterback class. I know everybody's been touting Caleb Williams, but Jay Daniels, I mean, he looks like a veteran playing out there, poised. He obviously has the skill with his feet to extend plays, to have some design runs for him, and he's just really accurate with the football. He hadn't really let it rip the first 2 games. Well, we saw him rip it twice in this game, and he ripped it pretty well down the field when he did. So yeah, I tip my cap to him as well. But again, I go back to the disaster is you just are so thin from a depth perspective. I'll go back to, Von Bell looks like a 30-plus-year-old safety right now, right? He just does. I value Von Bell. They value Von Bell because of what he can do to get guys in the right place. But he just looks like a guy who's lost a step because Father Time's gotten him. And in the world that we should have lived with, that we live in, you should have a ready-made replacement. That player should be Jordan Battle. He can't get on the field. It goes back to, was that a wasted draft pick? And you can go to almost every spot. DJ Turner's a second-round pick as a corner. He can't get on the field. Arguably, I guess you like what Dax Hill and Cam Taylor-Britt have done through the first 3 games, but you would think that kid could get in some nickel situations if possible, and he can't get on the field. So what have you done with your drafts? You've messed them up badly.
Yeah, the draft issue is a real concern. And when you start talking about the depth situation, Skinny, that's what leads me more to, and you brought this up on the recap podcast with Trags, are we just getting to a situation where money has changed everything, right?
Yes.
Guys are needing their money. Joe Burrow got his, other guys haven't got theirs yet. That's starting to cause some rifts, whether it's not personal between them, but it's just the nature of doing business. Like,
sure,
you got yours, I haven't got mine yet. I'm gonna do me. And by the way, the offense
and Trey Hendrickson wants more.
Yeah, good point. But we're talking about the stuff with like T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. It's like, by the way, the offense is great. The offense looks fine. They were plenty good enough to win Monday night. So I don't even know how much of an issue that stuff is. But I do think just trying to pay guys, trying to get guys while they're on rookie deals and keep this team young and together, it's not easy anymore. It's all of a sudden hard. You had to redraft to fill some of those spots. They didn't do it well enough. And this is a situation you find yourself in. And that's why I start that when I think about that, that's where I start leaning more towards this is a disaster that's starting to unravel.
I mean, I think really good rosters have 3 to 5 stars that you pay: an edge rusher, a corner, a left tackle, a quarterback, and probably a receiver. You're being asked in this marketplace you're being asked to pay what amounts to maybe the top paid wide receiver, top paid quarterback. I know fans want Jamar paid, but to me, some of that's a recipe for disaster if you don't draft well, because when you're paying that kind of money, and I think Jamar deserves close to top of the market. I've never said he doesn't. I just don't know if he deserves top of the market, very top of the market. But when you are going to pay those type of guys, and you're paying a left tackle in Orlando Brown, and you're paying an edge rusher in Trey Hendrickson, you're going to have some guys on rookie contracts performing well, and they just don't have enough of them.
Where do you find yourself leaning more towards? I sort of throw out the two scenarios. One being that, like, hey, it's a loss where a guy played out of his mind. Your offense was fantastic. If you get one stop on defense, you win. Right. This team is clearly trending in the right direction over the last 2 weeks. They're going to be fine over the long haul. Or is it closer to being this is a disaster and it's going to get bad?
No, I listen, a win cures everything. If you go to Carolina and win, which you should, I think it quells the noise. It probably quells their lack of confidence. Maybe they don't sound unconfident when I've talked to some guys. They sound pretty confident in themselves still. And they've dug out of these holes before. Zach made a point yesterday in the press conference. I know he's trying to probably pump himself up a little bit, but last year after that loss to Tennessee, remember they were sitting at 1-3. And then all of a sudden went on a 4-game winning streak when Burrow got healthy. Well, you win in Carolina, you're 1-3. I don't think you're going to get either BJ or Sheldon back this week, but maybe get one of them back next week for the Baltimore game. You win that game at home and you kind of take a deep breath, and it wasn't the month that you wanted, the 3-1 going into the Baltimore game, but you're probably not too far out of it in that division. I mean, Baltimore's already lost 2 games. You got a chance to hand them their 3rd loss if you beat them in a couple of weeks. And so suddenly it doesn't feel quite so far away. But I will tell you this, to your other point of this, you go to Carolina and lose, then yes, all bets are off. I think at that point, you're going to see guys start making business decisions. Yeah. I think you're going to see some guys just check out. And that's the recipe for disaster.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. I mean, if they do lose to Carolina, actually, let me ask you something else, because you mentioned this on the recap podcast, and I haven't heard anyone else say anything about this. You mentioned that Joe Burrow's health is now a week-to-week deal for this team. Is there a backstory to that? Are there issues with Joe Burrow, or is it just more of a concern that maybe something will pop up?
Yeah, something will pop up. I mean, and I was talking to somebody yesterday about this. That feels like kind of how seasons just go awry, right? Where you mess up early, you lose games you should win, you're sitting at 2-4, and then comes the massive injury, right? And that's to me is that's the week-to-week thing I'm talking about. You're still a Joe Burrow major injury away from going. And listen, I love what Jake Browning did last year, but that becomes Katie bar the door at that point.
So on that note, if let's say they lose this next game, does Joe Burrow look around at some point and say, you know what, like, I did just come off this surgery. Is it worth me risking the rest of this year? I can't imagine he does.
Not him. No, I don't. I honestly don't.
But Jamar, that's a different story, I feel like.
Trey the same. I think it's a different story.
Hendrickson?
Yeah.
And what about T?
T has to play well to get paid. Yeah, he's got to play well to get paid. He's got to prove he's healthy, and he's got to put up numbers. I thought Monday was at least a nice easing back step into it for him, but 3 for 39 yards probably isn't going to get you paid on the open market. You need to have a couple of big games along the way when he gets opportunities. I mean, I think you weren't going to put him into a ton of situations the other night. You got some man-to-man coverage on Jamar. You took advantage of that. I think that's the one thing having T back helped with, is getting Jamar freed up a little bit. And then there's going to be games where T's going to get freed up a little bit. And I don't see him doing that at all, because he has to perform well. He has to prove to teams he's healthy, or he's not getting paid what he thinks he should get paid.
Yeah, I think it's the health thing is bigger than anything for him. It's like he's put enough on film that he would still get his money. The problem is the knock against him is that he's not durable. So if he sits out this year under the guise of he's a little banged up, that's not going to help his value at all.
And that's where that narrative of him, nursing the hamstring injury and is it real? He spilled his guts out a few days before he came back about that. And I think he was very hurt by people believing that that's what he was doing, because again, he needs to play well and show that he is healthy. And he simply wasn't.
He needs to show that he's healthy, but to the first point, he does need to play well. So him coming back, if he's not 100% and playing poorly, is going to hurt him as well. And that's where I think people rightfully thought, hey, he's not 100% and he's going to wait until he absolutely is 100% or better.
I have no problem with it
before he gets on the field. And that's fine. He's welcome to do that, but he also shouldn't get upset about people acknowledging that, because that's the nature of the business at this point. Joe Burrow and Zach Taylor had their private meeting before they went into the actual locker room after the game, and a lot's been made out of that. Burrow now says he's going to be he's going to pick his spots to be a more vocal leader for the team. What have you made out of that whole aftermath? Because I find what he's saying rather uninteresting.
Yeah, I do too.
The fact that it's happening and the look of it, it's like, it feels like there's more to that.
I would guess. I mean, again, you can believe what you want. Zach says they've done it multiple times before after games. He just says he went through a wrong door. Again, believe what you want to believe and all that. The bottom line of this to me is that's probably his quarterback venting some frustration. That's a guy that Rick, I got out of coaching for a small period of time because I came to the point of I hated losing more than I enjoyed winning. I think I've met a kindred spirit in that guy, because he literally hates everything about losing. And I think that was just a frustration moment for him. I don't know how much more of a leader he needs to be. I think he already is a leader. I think he is vocal at times. I mean, I made a point to a couple people, and I'll make it here on the podcast. I mean, I'm sure he's already vocal with the offensive guys. I'm sure on the sidelines he's talking to those guys and giving them the kick in the ass when they need, and probably patting them on the back when they need it. But here's the thing. I don't need him saying something to the defense, because then guess what happens, Rick? It becomes offense versus defense in that locker room. You don't need that at all. Maybe you need a leader on defense. I thought Von Bell was that guy, and I still think he is. But yeah, I don't know what this whole new leadership thing is all about. It sounds like a bunch of fluff and nonsense to me.
Yeah, like, I'm completely uninterested in the idea of like Joe holding guys more accountable for running their routes properly, or telling a defender they need to be in better position. That does nothing for me. I am wondering, though, you had the Cam Taylor-Britt comments about the college offense that they were going to go up against Washington. You've had Jamar talking about we're still the team to beat in the AFC North, those types of things. He did mention yesterday, or whenever you guys talked to him this week, that he's going, some bigger picture stuff is maybe where he could make his voice heard. It's not so much about going across and telling defensive guys what they should be doing, but maybe bigger picture stuff. I'm wondering if that's it more so, that he's like,
maybe
what are we doing? We're looking like clowns out here, and we're getting beat, and we've got guys like not in training camp and all types of things. Like, we're looking like a mess. And I have to imagine that upsets him as much as anything. And Zach Taylor, he's starting to look like Marvin Lewis all over again with the whole like inmates running the asylum situation.
Yeah, it's close to that. I'll be honest with you. With Cam, he obviously made it a point after the Kansas City words about Xavier Worthy. I mean, he said, we don't want to degrade the other team. And I'm sure he told him that in private as well. Well, then he does it again. And I think if I was Zach Taylor in that situation, I would almost treat this high school like, and go to Cam and say, my man, you pop off one more time, I'm simply going to bench your ass, and it's going to cost you money because you're closing in on your next contract. And you've played well enough to probably earn a very healthy contract. But if I bench you, that's not going to help you. So how about we just shut up and play?
Skinny, playing Andy Dalton on the road at 1 p.m. on a Sunday as his former team that's desperate, and you've got to find a way to win a game. That's not exactly the spot I'd be looking for if I were the Bengals.
Yeah, I mean, of all the people that maybe drive the stake into your heart, right? It'd be Andy Dalton of all people. I mean, the guy who was loathed for his talent level here in town and didn't get to do enough to get them over the hump in the playoffs, et cetera, et cetera. Yet here he still is playing, and I don't think he can play 17 games at a high level like he did last week against Las Vegas, but he still can play at a high enough level to be effective. And if he's effective enough and he ends up beating this team, my word, what you talk about the ugliest way to get to that 0-4 mark with so much still looming. That honestly, that feels like the stake in the heart.
I know I did the whole thing earlier about like fans are always focused on firing the coach when anything goes wrong. At what point does this become a real conversation about the coaching staff, whether it's Zach or firing Lou Anarumo or what have you? Like, if they get to 0-4, do you start talking about that legitimately, or is it way past that?
If it's another ugly defensive performance, it'd probably be a position coach. I don't think it would be Lou. I really don't. I think he's got way too much respect for Lou. But, and I hope this isn't the case because I really like him. I mean, again, if the defensive line is poor again, as they were, and it's possible they are because they're playing with a bunch of backups and hacks who can't play at the moment. I mean, could a position coach like Marion Hobby, the defensive line coach, get it? Yeah, maybe. I don't know if that would be fair. I think Marion's a good coach, and I think guys really like him. But Joseph Osai hasn't developed. Zach Carter hasn't developed. Jury's still out on Miles Murphy. You got a couple of rookies. If you don't like the direction it's going in with some young guys you're trying to develop, do you go another route? It would have to be another ugly loss for that to happen. But I think something would have to be on the table. Yes.
I also wonder if let's say this team does turn it around and they're in the thick of it, whether they make the playoffs or not, they just end up having a around 500 season or better. Is there a certain point where you look at that as a franchise and say, and we keep putting out a team that's playoff caliber in terms of talent, and yet we start off slow at the beginning of every year and find ourselves in a hole? Is that coaching?
No, I go back to the poor drafting. I mean, you just have not drafted well enough. I mean, even go to the offensive side of things. You had to go to free agency to get your starting running back. You had to go to free agency to get your starting tight end. You had to go to free agency last year to get your left tackle. You had to go free agency the year before that to get your center and your right guard. The jury's still out on your left guard who you drafted, and he's kind of the focal point of fans' ire that they don't think Cordell Volson's good. I think he's just fine, mind you, but I get some of that. Jamar Chase, you didn't look, he fell into your lap. It was a choice between future Hall of Famer Jamar Chase, future Hall of Famer Penei Sewell. I don't think you went wrong either way. I think they got it right. Don't get me wrong. Jamar Chase was the right pick, but again, it wasn't like you were having to make a deep thought process to make that pick. Joe Burrow fell in your lap. T. Higgins fell in your lap at the top of the second round. I mean, so it's not like you've plucked guys. I'll give you Andre Yoshavash. Good for you. You look like you got a guy late. Same for Chase Brown. You look like you got a guy late, but for the most part, you've had to spend money at multiple positions because you haven't drafted well enough. So that goes not to the coaching staff. That goes up all the way upstairs to Duke Tobin. At what point does the finger get pointed at him and the scouting staff? In fact, I'm literally writing a column about that today.
Yeah, I think it probably already should, to your point. So I asked you last week before they played Washington, what was your confidence level out of 10 that they would win? And you said 9.9. So
that meant there was 0.1 that it wasn't going to happen, Rick.
That's correct. You left a chance.
Yes.
You left a chance, and Jaden Daniels slid right through that crack. What about Carolina here? Staring down 0-4 potentially. What do you think?
I'm going 9.9 again.
Yeah.
Listen, Carolina, God love them. They made the change at quarterback. Andy played great. But you also beat a team in Las Vegas in which the coach after the game came out talking about his players. He said, we have people making business decisions. So obviously they got some stuff going on in Las Vegas, right? Yeah. And people sounds like plural to me. I mean, I think people have pointed at Devontae Adams. I don't know who all he was talking about, but he said people. He didn't say a person. People sounds like multiple. And so was that the perfect storm for Carolina that you made the quarterback change? He got hot in the game. You honestly played. Vegas is terrible. And again, if guys are making business decisions in that game, that's already a problem. I don't think Carolina is worth a damn, to be honest with you. And they're without one of their weapons in Adam Thielen.
Any notes or topics that you wanted to address with the Bengals?
No. I'm really looking forward to seeing Amarius Mims. I thought he did some good things on Monday night. I talked to him a little bit yesterday. He was disappointed he gave up a sack. I never think of these things. Zach brought it up in the press conference of, he only gets bits and pieces of the game plan in practice because he doesn't rep with the first team. Trent Brown was. So, you throw that kid in the fire in his debut game, and he knows enough to get by, but probably everything, not everything. And, made probably a technique mistake and got beat. But I'm really looking forward to see. I mean, there was a play, I can't remember, his number 11. It was a linebacker on a running play. It was really actually one of his first snaps that he was in there. It was so noticeable. I mean, he rode great. He took this kid like 10 yards down the field. I don't know if you remember the play I'm talking about. I don't know if they showed it on TV. Yep. It was incredible to watch. So, yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to seeing him. I mean, I think we all knew this was coming at some point. I'm sorry for Trent Brown. He's an injury-prone guy who ends up suffering probably what is going to be a career-ending injury. But I think this was going to eventually be the case, even if Trent Brown was healthy, that Amarius Mims was going to start, and now here he is.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that too. And like you said, I mean, you see that one rep, and you're like, oh no, he looks horrible. And then the rest of the game, I thought he looked pretty good. There's some actually really positive moments from him. So.
Especially, I mean, in those later drives where basically the Bengals had to pass to get back into it.
So, right.
And I thought he did fine.
Yeah. All right, let's switch gears here to the Reds, which we haven't really been talking about as they've been playing out the string on this season. But then lo and behold, Sunday night, I get a text from one of our buddies who's saying, is the Reds really David Bell's fault? And I said, you want to do this on Sunday night? Seriously? He goes, well, they just fired him. I go, what? What are they doing with 5 games left? They make the decision to fire David Bell. Skinny, how much of this was them actually trying to get ahead and get an extra week run versus how much of this was trying to just be below the fold in the newspaper the next day with the Bengals playing Monday Night Football the following day?
So that was my cynical thought. And then I asked somebody who said that literally they do this is kind of when they're having their organizational meetings and they did want to get a head start on it. And the timing of it was the one I said, well, come on, late on a Sunday night. Well, apparently David had something to do with his son. I think he was playing a football game or something. He wanted to go watch that. Then he wanted to have the time frame to call friends and family to let them know he'd been fired. He didn't want it leaked out. By the time he did that, it was like 9:00 at night. And that's when the Reds finally sent something out at 10:00. But yeah, the cynical part of me thought this is like the late Friday news dump that gets buried.
I thought it was the most hysterical news dump I'd ever seen. A Sunday 10 p.m. before Monday Night Football with 5 games left.
I fell asleep at halftime of the Sunday night game. And I woke up at like 4 a.m. and I looked down at a text from a friend of mine. Said, what a Bush League move, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what is he even talking about? Then I had to go to our website. I went, oh my gosh, they fired David Bell. Okay. That's how I found out about it.
Yeah. It was just one of those weird moments. And here's what I keep coming back to. David Bell is not the reason the Reds are in the situation they're in. He's also not the solution. He wasn't making anything better. And I don't have much confidence that he was going to be the guy that turned things around and got them out of this. So I really am mostly indifferent to the fact that he's been fired, or if he stayed the manager, I would have felt the same way. The thing that I keep coming back to, though, is they signed him to a 3-year extension last July.
Insane.
That just speaks to the fact that they have no plan. They have no ability to stick to a plan, and they have no clue what they're doing.
Well, and that's the thing. And if you go back and look at some of the flowery quotes from Nick Kroll back then of how, he's done a great job with these young guys and we're building something here. I don't listen. We've talked about this a billion times during the summer. It wouldn't move the needle either way for me if David Bell stayed or was fired. I'd shrug my shoulder at either one of those things. But I just want to, what changed? I mean, I've never thought a whole lot of David Bell as a manager. I didn't think much changed in the way he managed this season. Were there some fundamental flaws base running? Yeah, I'll grant you some of that. Could you question some of his bullpen moves? You can question every manager's bullpen moves. But when I have a choice between writing Stuart Fairchild or Will Benson on the lineup card every day, fully knowing that they suck, I mean, whose fault is that?
Exactly right. And I mean, even more so this year when you factor in like the Noelvi Marte suspension, the injuries that he faced. I mean, what
failure of Jamer Candelario, who you signed, Nick Kroll.
Yeah, I mean, when you're pinning it on like the defense, but the reason the defense sucked is in large part because of the guys you brought in at the last minute through free agency to fill some gap. Like, I just don't understand their reasoning. I don't really care. Again, I'm fine with David Bell being fired. I have nothing. Yeah. I'm not going to fight that at all. I have zero optimism that they are going to fix things as a result of this, and that this is a move in the right direction.
And listen, I wrote a piece, I think it was last summer because we talked about it on the podcast, lauding a lot of the trades that Nick Kroll made to get rid of some veterans to bring in prospects and how they won most of those trades. And I thought he was trending in the right direction, but man, their farm system now looks very bare. That they're, I don't know what is their plan to spend. Will they spend? I don't know because they haven't had a try. Now, again, you can say, well, they spent this offseason. Yeah, you spent on a hack reliever, Emilio Pagan. Nick Martinez has been great, and I hope they are able to bring him back. But Candelario was past due. Do you trust them even if they do spend money to go sign the right guy?
No. I mean, and with the Reds, like with the Bengals, it's a little bit different because at least you had that run to the Super Bowl. You had the team looked like there was a window there, so to speak, to use that cliche again. There was the window. It's looked like it might be shutting quick, but the Reds never even had anything going on. Like I don't understand what we're supposed to be clinging to. There was like basically 18 months ago, we started deciding some of these young guys were looking really promising. And so we were like, oh, it's opening up. The Reds are going to be a contender here in the next couple of years. And that has just gone completely by the wayside. All of a sudden, they're right back in the dumps of Major League Baseball.
And listen, I can certainly point to injuries being a factor here, but is there an issue with the way you train your guys? You have a whole starting pitching staff that wound up getting on the DL. Matt McClain has never gotten. I honestly, I'm of the ilk. Do I ever see Matt McClain play again? I'm serious about that. It just keeps getting kicked down the road. Then Christian Encarnacion-Strand plays with a fractured wrist that hadn't completely healed yet. I mean, well, what are we doing with that side of things too?
Yeah. Do you like any of the names that have been floated out there for potential manager? I've seen Terry Francona, Skip Schumacher, David Ross, Don Mattingly.
Yeah, Skip Schumacher was manager of the year in the National League last year. I mean, I know you're going to look at his record this year in Miami, but my God, that was a horror. Remember we played the game of. Remember when I was trying to name the starters?
Yeah, I mean, he was set up. It was a rebuilding, scrappy year.
Yeah, correct. I like Don Mattingly. I mean, he did some good things in Miami. I like David Ross.
How old is Don Mattingly at this point?
It's a good question. I don't think he's probably around the mid 60 mark. Like Francona's 65,
he's only
63.
I was going to say 75.
No, I was going to say he and Francona played pretty much in the same era. And Francona's 65. I mean, Francona's the most accomplished of the bunch. And he's won everywhere he's been. So you love that pedigree. I just wonder, he had some health issues at the end in Cleveland. If he's even interested in doing something like that.
Do you think Barry Larkin is a legitimate candidate?
I do.
What are your thoughts on him potentially getting it? Would you like that? Or do you think
from what I understand, he doesn't want it, but could be talked into it. And so I think that's where we're at.
Interesting. Do you get the sense that the Reds really want him? Like he would be the top option if he would say yes?
I don't think he'd be the top option.
He's in the group.
But I think he, again, if the upper part of this ownership group can talk him into it, I think he would do it. I think otherwise they would go somewhere else.
Interesting. Any other thoughts on
No,
David
I'm with
Bell's
you. I mean,
official
it didn't move the needle for me. I mean, what'll move the needle, I think, for every Reds fan, myself and you and everybody that follows this team is what will you do this offseason? What kind of things can you do to make this team better? And don't tell me it's Matt McClain's coming back, Christian Encarnacion-Strand's coming back, the pitching staff's all coming back. No. That's still not enough. You need more, and you need to do more, and you need to have a plan. And it can't just be spend money. I mean, spend money wisely. Go get players that can actually perform that aren't in their early 30s who are on the downside of their career. Go get somebody in their prime that's going to cost you or something along those lines. Get somebody that's going to make a difference on this team, at least somebody. And then if McClain comes back and CES comes back and Marte, gets a full off season and full spring training to maybe get back to what he looked like, his rookie year, 2 years ago, not his rookie year. I guess this is technically his rookie year. Then we can maybe have a conversation about things heading in the right direction. Until otherwise, you're either spinning your tires or you're going backwards.
Yeah. Until I see them have success on the field in actual games, maybe even make
I got suckered
or something crazy, I am not going to fall for it again. I can tell you
I got suckered. Yeah, I told you I thought this was a playoff caliber team when the year started. I said, I can't imagine all these guys have sophomore slumps. I was counting on Matt McClain playing the whole year, at least a chunk of the year, and I was counting on CES doing more than he did, and that didn't come to fruition because of injury. But listen, I got duped too, so I'm kind of with you. I need to see it.
Yeah, I mean, if you would have told me Hunter Green would have the year that he had this year and they still would be a disaster, that would have been so disheartening to tell me before the season, and that's exactly how it played out.
No, right.
All right, let's switch gears here to college football, and this will be a quick segment because we've got a little bit long with the Bengals stuff, and It was a boring week in local college football. A great week for Cincinnati fans as they got back on the right track. We talked about how bad things looked the first few weeks, but then they beat Houston 34-0. And you can say Houston's bad, but Skinny, this is a team in UC that has only one conference win prior to this one. To get a conference win 34-0 is nice no matter who you're playing against.
I mean, they looked impressive. Again, to your point, Houston is bad, and they only have 2 conference wins in their history, and they're both over Houston. But it was an impressive performance. And so I think we talked about this last week that, hey, you go beat Houston, no matter how you did it. I mean, if you just beat Houston, you can look back and go, guys, we've had one bad quarter. I mean, in 4 games, one bad quarter has cost us. I think you feel confident about yourself. And then to go out and do that to where you're pulling your starters and your starting quarterback with lots of time left on the clock to get some snaps off of him and get a little more experience for Brady Lichtenberg and others. That was impressive. And I think that can carry on a little bit with this team. I think if I'm a UC fan, I'm super excited to see how they perform against Texas Tech this week.
I'd be feeling pretty good about the job Satterfield did with finding a quarterback in the transfer portal this year. I think Sorsby, he's a guy with multiple years of eligibility. He was 12 of 15 for passing for 188 yards and 2 touchdowns, also ran for a 3rd touchdown in this game. But Skinny, the biggest thing for me is like, he just makes good decisions. He's calm, he's poised, he doesn't turn the ball over. I don't know if he's the most talented guy out there. In fact, I'm pretty certain in the Big 12, he's not among the most talented, but he gives you a chance. And I mean, in this NIL era, if you're in UC's situation, I think that's all you can ask for. I think they did a pretty good job landing him.
I agree because, even through Emory Jones's issues last year, they were a pretty good running team. In fact, one of the best in the country. And so you had most of those linemen back. I think all those linemen back. You had Corey Kiner back. So you felt like, hey, you can lean on the run game this year because it was effective last year. And now you add a passer to that. It makes you a more well-rounded team. And they've done pretty well on offense. And listen, I still think there's holes in that defense. I don't think they're a team that's going to shut out anybody else this year and probably going to give up a chunk of points in the Big 12 where points come aplenty. But again, you needed a confidence boost too for that group. And they played great. They came up with a couple key turnovers down in the red zone, but you're allowed to do that to keep people out of the end zone. And I thought they were really good.
Yeah, that was their first shutout since 2018, which that has to feel really good for a UC team that we were talking about. Like, hey, the defense looks like a disaster. The offense may be able to put up some points, but defense is going to be a problem. Great to see them get the shutout. How much do you put into the fact of like they got those 3 turnovers though? Is it like, you got a little lucky there, or do you feel like the defense is taking a major step forward?
No, I thought they took a step forward because they got stops as well. But yeah, I mean, those turnovers, some of that's luck. Some of it's being in the right place at the right time too.
Yeah. Kentucky beat Ohio 41-6. Ohio State beat Marshall 49-14. Any takeaways from the Ohio State game? They haven't played anyone with a pulse yet. They'll finally play Michigan State this week. Kentucky, the defense is obviously really dialed in. We know that.
Really good.
Yeah. Is there anything else that stood out from that game?
The offensive line still didn't pass block consistently enough to me. I did think they found a little something with Gavin Wimsatt, the backup quarterback. I thought he threw it pretty well. I thought he showed some things in the run game to where if you're not pass blocking maybe effectively enough to give Brock Vandegrift time, because I do think he gets very antsy when the pocket collapses around him. That maybe you have a change of pace plan to go to in Gavin Wimsatt of saying, listen, we just need this guy to extend some drives for us. This would be a great test for this defense because Ole Miss is averaging 55 points a game. They haven't played anybody, mind you, but they're still averaging 55 points a game. But I think this defense is legit. I think they got down on their dauber a little bit in the South Carolina game when the offense just couldn't do anything. And, they gave up a couple of weird big plays as well. But for the most part, I mean, this defense has played extraordinarily well. And you can include Georgia in that mix that they played extraordinarily well against.
Yeah, I mean, coming out of the second week of the season, it was like for UK fans and for UC fans, brutal. You feel like the season's already over. The last 2 weeks, though, they've really bounced back and given those fans some reason for optimism. Let's get into our pick'em segment. Yep. You went 2-6 last week. Woo. I went 4-4. Not a good week for either one of us. You are now 9-17 overall. I'm at 11-15 overall. I did hit my bet of the week. It was the teaser.
I didn't.
I know you did not. It was the teaser with Ohio State -33.5 and UK -13.5. And you did need that teaser because Ohio State only ended up winning the game by 35 points. So that ended up playing out well. Saturday at noon, we've got Kentucky at Ole Miss. Ole Miss is a 17.5 point favorite. The total is 53.5.
Yeah. Again, Ole Miss hasn't played anybody. I do think they're really good. Jackson Dart's completing 80% of his passes for almost 400 yards a game. But it's been, I think, Furman and Georgia Southern. They've played their 4 bye games. Wake Forest was in that mix as well. I think this Kentucky defense is legit, and I think it allows it to hang around. I'll go Ole Miss 27, Kentucky 20.
All right, so that is Kentucky covering, and it's well under the number of 53.5. I'm going to go Ole Miss 31, Kentucky 10. So Ole Miss and the under for me as well. That brings us to, by the way, one of the teams they played was Middle Tennessee, who absolutely stinks. Bet against Middle Tennessee if you get the chance.
Yes.
I've been following that. Saturday at 7:30, Ohio State will play at Michigan State. The Buckeyes are 23.5 point favorite. The total is 48.5.
Yeah, I think it's gone up. Or actually, that's down. I think it opened at 25.5, so it's down to 23.5. At 25.5, in fact, I do a couple of pick'em games online. I took Michigan State in the points. As goofy as it sounds, at 23.5, I could see like a 34-7, 34-10-ish win to win by 24. I'll go Ohio State 34, Michigan 10.
34-10.
Or Michigan State 10, rather.
So we are under. That's Ohio State and the under here.
Yes.
For you. And I'm on that same side of things. I've got Ohio State 38, Michigan State 10. So we're very similar in our numbers there. It's just going to be nice to, I know Michigan State stinks, but it's going to be nice to see Ohio State play an actual Power 5 school, if you will, a team in their conference.
Yep.
Saturday at 7:45, we've got UC at Texas Tech. Texas Tech is a 2.5-point favorite. The total is 59.5.
Coming off a nice win over Arizona State, because I thought Arizona State was playing pretty well. I'm going to lean towards the Bearcats going on the road and stealing one. I'll go UC 30, Texas Tech 27.
30-27. So that is under the number, and UC is covering there. By the way, your whole reasoning for Arizona State playing well, we did this last week too, is because
I know that
Texas State by 3 points.
But they were an underdog.
I know, but it's Texas State that they beat, man. It doesn't matter. That doesn't make them good. Just because they beat a crappy team that they weren't supposed to beat, that still makes them crappy. Anyway, Texas Tech 35, Cincinnati 31, Texas Tech and the over for me. Finally, Sunday at 1 p.m., we've got Bengals at the Panthers. Bengals are a 4.5-point favorite. The total is 46.5.
I honestly feel like Vegas is trying to reel you into the Carolina side of thing with this. If they're coming off of a win, right? And they're at home, and this Bengals team is 0-3, and yet somehow I'm getting 4.5 with Carolina. Bengals 31, Carolina 10. They stink.
31-10. So that'll hit the over. Or no, that's the under.
Actually, no. I'll go. What's the total again?
46.5.
Man, I'll go 31-17. Andy gets a late touchdown in garbage time.
All right, so that is Bengals and
Come on, guys, let's play hard.
That's it. We're gonna go out there and do we practice. Oh, 1, 2, 3, play hard. 1, 2, 3, play hard.
So good.
I'm with you. I love the part of the podcast where you and Tregs were talking about what this number would be coming out, because that's something I had on my mind too. And I was thinking Bengals would be like a 2.5-point.
Yeah, I did too.
Under the field goal. I think you're right. I think they're trying to sucker fans into taking the Panthers, and I'm going to do it. I don't think the Bengals are going to win this by more than a field goal.
Okay.
I know I'm going to regret that. I know I'm saying right now what they're doing to me, I'm aware of it, and I'm still falling victim to it. I'm going to go Bengals 27, Panthers 24. Panthers in the over. Finally, that brings us to our bet of the week. What do you got?
This number flabbergasts me, and I'm probably, I've been wrong on just about everything other than the Georgia bet. I should have just stopped at Georgia in the opener and been done with it and collected my cash and called it a season. I watched Illinois, Nebraska the other night. I think Nebraska's a pretty good team. I don't think they're great, but I think they're pretty good. And Illinois went on the road and handled them. I like Illinois' defense, and they're getting 17.5. At least that's the number I've got. You may have a different number what you're looking at, so you can correct me if I'm wrong. They're getting 17.5 at Penn State. I love Illinois.
Big Brett's doing things there. He's getting them rolling. I don't hate that. I think Illinois is pretty good too. I haven't really paid much attention to the other side there, though. That's the only problem about that game.
I mean, don't forget Bowling Green State almost beat Penn State at Penn State.
Yeah, I just haven't really watched them much this year.
Yeah, I know.
I've seen the scores.
I mean, they just rolled up Kent State, but everybody's rolled up Kent State.
All right, so what was your pick there?
Illinois getting the point, 17.5.
Okay,
at Penn State.
17.5. I'm going with the big games. I'm going to set you up here. Little 7:30 p.m. parlay. Turn on both your TVs. Get it going. You put both big games on your TV, and you'll have
Georgia, Alabama, baby. Little Georgia, Alabama.
Alabama plus 8.5 at home against Georgia.
So
I think they're going to win outright. So
I do too.
I love them at 8.5 plus 8.5.
Yeah. And this is a teaser you're getting.
Yeah, because they're a 2.5-point underdog.
Yes,
if you're not aware. Ohio State, we just mentioned, is a 23.5-point favorite. I'm going to take them down to 17.5 at Michigan State. I know people hate that 17.5 number.
You don't want to buy that extra half?
I don't. Don't worry about it. They're going to win by 20 plus.
Okay.
But just go ahead and give yourself a little breathing room like we did last week. They'll win by 3 touchdowns, but you don't want to take the chance on it being a 21-point win and you don't get your money. So Alabama plus 8.5, Ohio State minus 17.5.
Yeah, I may have to throw a teaser on Illinois getting 20. I'd do a 7-pointer probably. Illinois getting 24.5 and Bama getting 9.5. I love Bama taking Bama up. I mean, I'm with you. I think they win outright, and if they don't, it's going to be a close game.
I can't wait for that game. That's going to be
that's great.
Fantastic Saturday night action. And the fact that Ohio State, Michigan State is opposite of that makes it perfect. It's like a game you don't really care all that much about, but you actually want to see Ohio State play someone for once. So that'll be good viewing.
I'm actually not flying to Charlotte to cover the game. I'm riding with a buddy. We're going to stop in Virginia, me and him and another couple that are driving another car. We're going to play golf. and we probably roll into Charlotte around 7, check in the hotel, and right away, man, take a quick shower and head to a sports bar and just settle in for the rest of the night watching those games.
Hell yeah. That sounds fantastic, honestly.
Yep.
All right, let's get into Ask Anything.
Let's do it.
We'll start with the big sports story of the week. We had multiple people send this to us. They want your take on the UNLV quarterback situation. If you haven't seen this yet, which I don't know how you haven't, but Matthew Sluka, the starting quarterback for UNLV, announced that he's going to quit playing immediately and will redshirt the rest of the season to keep his eligibility. He only has 1 year left. Basically, it's turned into a he said, they said situation where he's saying the coaches told him he was going to get $100,000 when he transferred there. They're saying that no, that was never promised to him. He came after the 3-0 start by the team and asked for more money, and now he's out. So who knows what to make of all of this? But Skinny, that's what everybody wants to know from you. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think you're going to see more of this for starters, because these are not written agreements. These are literally handshake agreements, if you will. There's a part of me that doesn't believe he was ever offered $100,000. I mean, he's coming from Holy Cross for a guy. You're going to pay $100,000 to a guy coming from Holy Cross? I mean, are you really? If that's where we're at in the portal, I quit. I honestly, I quit.
Well, here's what I do believe, though, because I've seen this happen. I believe there was an assistant coach on that staff, at least, that had said or intimated to someone that there might be $100,000 from. I don't know if it was an agreement in place, but I absolutely believe that he was made to think that he was going to get that money. And that's one thing you brought up that's interesting, because I keep seeing all these people being like, well, why didn't they get a lawyer? Why wasn't there a contract in place? I don't think people understand how messy NIL has been.
Very.
Yes, there have been some signed contracts. Yes, there are some agents that are legit working with players, and you hear about those and it looks official.
But there's a lot of these guys that aren't legit agents working with these kids.
There is far more just moms and dads talking to an assistant coach being like, you'll give my guy $40,000 to come there? Okay, that's what we're going to do. And there's no agreement in place. And by the way, there's no one really to complain to when they go back on it. And that's kind of the issue everyone's facing right now. I don't know what happened in this UNLV situation for certain.
Nobody does. I mean, except for the people involved. I mean, we can all guess at it. I mean, it could have been to the point of he balled out for 3 games. I think they're 3-0, if I'm not mistaken. He played very well. Of him going and saying, I want some money. And they go, no, man, that's not going to happen. And that's at that point, he goes, well, then the hell with you. I'm going to transfer. I put 3 big boy games on tape. I'll find another school that will pay me.
That's essentially what they're trying to say happened. Here's part of why I don't believe that fully, is because the second that story came out late the other night, on Tuesday night, I think it was Monday night or Tuesday night. It came out late.
Like Tuesday night, yeah. I think
by like 6 a.m, there were 6 different media outlets from that area with tweets out that said, according to sources, he came to them and asked for $100,000 after his 0-3 start. I've been around enough college athletics programs to know exactly how this works. When the school gets mad about a narrative that's out there, they immediately text everyone involved and say, this, like, here's the actual information. By the way, they never do that if you actually want the information or are trying to find the information. Only when the other side gets out and they're not happy about it, then they text everyone they know and like, here's what the source says now. And no one, I mean, it's 7 a.m. and I'm reading these tweets, Skinny. None of these news TV reporters were out digging all night to get the facts of this by 7 a.m. You know what I mean? So they just read a text and then tweeted whatever they were told. That's why I believe the player more than the schools. But to your point, this is just going to happen more and more and more. I think coaches and especially assistants.
Again, what if I am like, let's just say I'm the backup quarterback for school, Power 5 school that's really good. And I don't get a ton of NIL because I am the backup quarterback, right? I get some, but I'm the backup quarterback. Starting quarterback gets hurt in week 2 or 3. And in 5 games after me coming in, I'm balling out and I've got us in a chance to win the college football playoff. I want my money.
Yep.
I want my money. Want my money. It's going to happen.
Yeah. So you know what will have to happen to prevent that is colleges will have to treat them like employees and give them some type of contract.
See, and I think that's where we're trending with this eventually, is that they will become employees.
You have to sign some type of contract. There's no way you can make perpetual free agency work in any sport.
Right. No, that's exactly right.
Just brought up. If there's no contract, guys are going to hold you over a barrel whenever they have their leverage, because that's the best way of doing business if you're on the other side of it. Now, the one thing is, I'll say, like, coaches are bad. They've been messy. They've been shady. Also, players and parents and agents and handlers, they've been twice as bad on their end. So I'm not like taking either side. I'm just telling you,
I'm not either.
It's
I'm with
messy
you.
And it's coming. Like, there's going to be a lot more of this stuff.
Yeah, I'm eighth man on the basketball team, and all of a sudden I really ball out, and my coaches put me in the starting lineup, and suddenly I'm the guy. And yet I was being paid like the eighth man. I want my money. Hey man, I'm averaging 15 a game and 8 boards. We're winning because you put me in the lineup. I'm not getting. I want my money. That's where we're going.
There was always talk before players were able to get paid, or going back, a decade or more ago, before anyone was getting paid anything legally. There was always the talk that what if teams just decide to like sit out the championship game, right? There's all this money invested. They'd have to do something. But the problem is you'd have to get everyone to sit out, and that was just never going to happen.
Right.
Now, at an individual level, there are definitely going to be guys that have the balls to say, I'm not going to play. I'm not going to play in this big game. You got to pay me.
I'm noting you. And I again, I think the only way that you do this is you have legit signed contracts that you are paid this amount, and there's no renegotiating that until the contract expires. Sorry, you don't have a collective bargaining agreement, if you will. We've got a contract that says you're paid this much for this amount of time between March 1st and February 28th, or whatever time frame you want to call it, August, whatever time frame. This is what you paid. Period. End of story.
And they'll start being multi-year deals, I would assume.
Yes, maybe.
You're coming here for 2 years at least.
Right. Yeah, that way I think as a coach too, you wouldn't mind having that binding agreement for a player that you really like of, I don't have to worry about this guy coming for a year and going, see ya, I'm going somewhere else.
Yeah, you could actually coach him. Hold him accountable and be his coach, instead of being like, oh, well, if I say the wrong thing, this guy's going to up and leave in the middle of the season or at the end of the year. So we can probably leave it there. The one thing I wonder about this, though, is this is all over allegedly $100,000.
I know. Right.
This is what the kid is saying he wants is $100,000. UNLV right now is ranked 23 in the country.
I know it.
Is it not worth more than $100,000 for the university for them to be ranked 23? I'm serious. Like, just from a PR standpoint, marketing wise, isn't it worth more than $100,000 for them to be ranked?
Or you just put your foot down.
Someone pay him.
I know. Or you put your foot down and say, we're not going to let guys hold us ransom like this, and we're going to set a precedent right now.
Well, they probably should. The guy's only completing like 48% of his passes. It's not like he's been setting the world on fire himself, but he's in the position to do this, so he's doing what he feels he should. It's interesting to me that no donors at UNLV behind the scenes were just like, guys, we are 3-0, we are ranked. I'm just going to pay the $100,000 and get, or $75,000 and get him to settle or whatever. I mean, it's surprising to me that it got to this level where it became a public thing.
Lefty Rosenthal can pay him, can he? I mean, can't Anthony the Ant pay him? Somebody out there's got to be able to pay him.
Big A?
Yeah, the big A.
Guys on the desert?
Yeah.
Favorite form of potato, Skinny? This is our next question here. Your favorite form of potato?
I will vacillate between baked and tots. You get me a good. In fact, we went up to the LPGA tournament on Sunday, and then had kind of a late lunch, early dinner at Putter's Bar and Grill. And I got to tell you, man, they have some of the best tots when they're nice and crunchy, but then they're nice and soft on the inside. I could almost, if you got me like a bag of Oritas that were cooked properly with just a thing of ketchup, I could probably just have that as a meal. It would be gross for me to eat all of it, but I probably could. But I like a good baked potato with a steak. I mean, it's hard to go wrong there. It just, I even love eating the skin. You give me a good potato skin as well. So there we go. How about you?
O'Brien's. If you're a tots guy, you got to go to O'Brien's.
You told me that before.
You can get them seasoned if you want. They have.
I just want regular. Yeah, just nice salt
too. They're fantastic. And then they come with a sriracha mayo that they make in house. That is out of this world. It's not just sriracha and mayo. They got something else, because I've tried to make it myself. It's not the same, but it is.
Have you tried to ask them what the extra ingredient is?
Yeah, they told me there's another thing, and they wouldn't tell me what it was.
They wouldn't tell you. Okay.
Yeah. But that being said,
it's probably ketchup.
Maybe. I don't know. It's very good. To go to O'Brien's if you're a tots guy.
Right.
I like tots a lot, but honestly, like I have trouble getting away from a good French fry, and I like home cut like the best, like a Penn Station style fry. I will tell you that I do like their fries. Yeah. And they always do a nice job of actually overfilling the carton, and then it overfills into the bag. So on the way home, you eat a bunch of them and the carton's still full. So that's I like that. I like the way they handle that situation too. Yes, that's always nice. And we'll wrap it up with this, Skinny. If you had to make a journey to the center of the universe to save mankind, what two people are you taking with you?
I'm taking Clint Eastwood, because he's done this kind of stuff before.
That's right.
Taking Vladimir Zelensky, man. How that guy has managed this war in Ukraine. He can go to the center of the earth with me.
That is not where I thought you would go with that.
Who'd you think I was going with? Like Superman or Spider-Man or
I don't know. I just didn't think Vladimir Zelensky was
I don't
on
know.
the tip of your tongue.
I find that I find him fascinating in a weird way that he's still standing tall, man.
Well, fair enough. I mean, it's not. Look,
He's taking the fight back to Russia.
It's not a bad pick on merit. I was just surprised that was the first name that came out. I think with this, I would just be going person I could get along with. It'd be like, if we're going to the center universe, we're not making it. We're going to die. If we've got to save mankind and you're relying on me, we've got no shot anyway. So it's going to be a long trip. Let me just take someone I can get along with. That's not going to drive me crazy. So,
or take a couple of hot,
if you want,
or take a couple of hot women and have
they want nothing. They want nothing to do with me, though. That's going to be a lonely ride out there to the center of the universe.
But you'll be a hero forever. We'll all be heroes forever.
Oh, if that's how we have to save mankind is repopulate the world. In that case, I'm in. Yeah.
There you go.
I'd be productive in that regard.
I like it.
All right. That's all we got.
All right. Good stuff. Thanks very much. For Rick Boring, I'm Richard Skinner. Thanks for being with us. It's been the Skinny Podcast, the weekly potpourri edition, he said, presented by Blake the Attorney Maislin.